I have a lovely member of, a lovely panel members that I'd like to be able to call up. And before I do that, we will start with one of the panelists who will do a short presentation. Yes, this is a real doctor, just so that I can put it on the new. You might think all the people who are being called doctors today are not doctors. So this is a real doctor. So we want to call in Dr. Valentina Russo. She's a senior engineer at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. We've called her in because in the kind of work that we are doing, you always want to learn from people who have done the same thing, isn't it? So that we can take best practice, similar experiences, and what have you. So Dr. Valentina is an expert in systems analysis, modeling, sustainability, and industrial ecology, and would like her to come and speak to us about the work they are doing in Southern Africa. So that we can learn from it and see and compare it to what we are doing here in East Africa as we advance the conversation on wealth management. Please help me welcome Dr. Valentina.
Hello, everyone. I don't know what I have to do. I think I'm waiting for the presentation somehow. Okay, okay. Thanks, Rosa, for the introduction. A few more words from myself. Okay, I'm from the Council for Scientific Industrial Research from South Africa. Italian by origin, but now I've been living in Africa and South Africa for 10 years. So I consider South Africa my adoption country. I've been an engineer by background, industrial engineer, but very boring thing. And I wished once day to start dealing with waste and doing something and create an impact with my job. And that has been possible since I moved to South Africa, first 5 years at the University of Cape Town, and then the next 5, and keep counting, at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. I'm going to present now the work that we have done in collaboration with the Pew Charitable Trust in the application of a model called the Pathways Model for dealing with plastic waste. So, are you struggling a lot? Sorry. So the Pew Charitable Trust actually did a very groundbreaking study called the Breaking the Plastic Wave that was published in 2020. It was the first, but it's not the last, global study on plastic waste. So they came to us, to South Africa, and we were the first country to first test and then apply the model and the tool, and then actually apply to the South African context. And going from global scale, okay, I know the presentation basically by heart. And going from global scale to national scale came with few hiccups here and there. So it's not happening. I can do from here. Okay, I can see. Okay, that was actually the study done by the Pew Charitable Trust. It was the first global assessment, and what the study showed us that, to me, was the most striking thing. They told us where we're heading to if we don't do anything, and especially they put a cost of not doing anything, what they call the cost of inaction, because I think we always come with the thing, how much does it cost to do X, Y, Z? they put a number, how much does it cost not doing that. That was probably for me, one the most, the biggest achievement of this study. I think, well, we're all aware what's happening internationally, so I'm not going to any of this. I'm going straight into our tool. So what is this Pathway software tool? It was developed, it's a tool, so it's something that you can download and take some while. Okay, you can download and install on your computer and use. It's been developed by the Pew Charitable Trust at Oxford University. It evolved from the initial study. The focus is strongly on the end of life of plastic. Not about production, but end of life, from when plastic becomes waste and what happens from that point onwards. It enables a different kind of analysis, current and projected plastic material flow, can estimate plastic pollution flow, greenhouse gas emission, potential job creation, and as I mentioned, cost. It can allow for multi-objective optimization and to develop what they call the optimal system change scenario, and you can test whatever kind of policies actually you want. As I said, South Africa was the first country to apply it, and he came with some hiccups. How it looks like, that's the tool. It comes with a lot of features, freely available. You don't pay anything. You just go to the download page and you download and install. It comes with all the supporting library documentation to get you at speed. It's a very flexible tool, can be applied to different geography scales. They have been applied at global scale, have been applied at country scale in South Africa. We are currently applying in Zambia, and in India has been also tested at city scale. Can be customizable to the local context, and I'll show you how. So there is a kind of system map, and this, which is the starting point, and you customize your system map to your needs. The plastic can be characterized and analyzed at different levels. Can be characterized by type, multi-material, rigid, flexible, by function, by polymer, by product. It has some powerful analytical capabilities, so you can do sensitivity analysis, you can do uncertainty analysis, you can set constraints, and so on and so forth. It can give you insight on possible future scenarios, or what if you have in mind that you want to test. So you can evaluate policy options before you put in place, even at the drafting stage, and of course allows for trade-off analysis when it's cost versus pollutions versus job creation. Okay, what were the problems, the plastic pollution problem that we face in South Africa? Growing plastic consumption, we have backlog in waste collection services. Almost 40% of our households do not have a weekly waste collection services, and the situation is even more severe in rural areas. The collected waste is disposed mainly in landfill. That's our to-go solution at the moment. Some of which, a third of them are not compliant, which means that there is leakage that ends up in the environment. South Africa has a rich policy landscape. We have since 1990, it's the right to a safe health environment is embedded in South African Constitution. We have existing measures, including extended producer responsibility, but today they're being not so effective. What we did, we tested actually three different scenarios. The first was the business as usual. Where are we heading? Which basically responds to the question, where we'll be heading if we don't do anything, if we continue doing what we're doing today. The second question wants to answer, wants to test it, what does it entail to meet the extended producer responsibility targets. So when the extended producer responsibility came out in 2020, they came out with 6 different notices for different waste streams. One of the notices was for paper, packaging, and single-use products, which has targets for, of course, plastic is in there, whichever plastic is in there. And the targets that were set were on collection, recycling, reuse, recycled content, and in the amended version, also on energy recovery. And then we wanted to test also what they called a system change scenario. Why is not? Okay. The last point that will hopefully will appear rather soon, which is kind of finding the sweet spot between minimizing plastic pollution, greenhouse gas emission costs, and maximizing jobs. So finding this kind of sweet spot. That's the system map. That's where everything starts. So there is a global system map. This is the South African system map. Each and every iteration, whether it's a country level or regional level or city level, has to start to define hello. Okay, the system map. So as I said, the focus is heavily on end of life. So this is the starting point of the model. So this is the input, total plastic waste, and then it goes into collection, sorting, recycling, well-managed waste, whichever is the solution, and a lot of emphasis in what happens when the waste is not well managed, whether through recycling or containment. So what you need to run pathways, data. It's a hungry beast for data. So if you don't have data, the tool itself comes with some archetype data from the global study. There are 8 archetypes which are divided per economic income level and rural versus urban. So your archetype could be your plan B, but don't rely on too much on that because it's already been done. So the key point is to start from the archetype data and made it your own for your specific context. In South Africa, we were quite lucky. So we have quite a good relationship with industry, government, research institution, producer responsibility association. So that's where the data came from. And when we had data gaps, we relied on the urban upper middle income archetype data, which came from the global study. And we verified if those data were justifiable for South Africa through expert opinion. So we went through some stakeholders consultation. Each scenario was run from 25 years, and where there were some historical data up to 2020, and then we just propagate projections. Okay, results, straight into the results. Business as usual. What we heading? So the results say that plastic pollution will near double in South Africa if we don't take any action in 2040, starting from 2020 level. The blip that you see, it's because in 2020, there were 2019, 2020 was COVID, so there was kind of a mess with data. So we have to also to deal with this kind of glitches. Despite the huge coastline, South Africa has very little aquatic pollution, 14%, compared to air pollution coming from open burning. That came quite as a surprise for South Africa because we thought we have huge aquatic pollution. But I think The paper from Jambrecht et al., which say South Africa is the 11th plus ocean contributor to plastic pollution to the ocean. From in the current state, only 90% of the plastic which is disposed is recycled, and we have 60% of greenhouse gas emission coming from the open burning of plastic waste. What happens if we apply the extended producer responsibility targets on collection and recycling and recycled content? It happens that in 2040, we might experience a 33% decrease in plastic pollution compared to the business as usual, if we meet the targets. In real terms, this because the targets only run for 5 years and you basically pull the plug out, they act as a kind of stabilization waste. The moment you don't keep it up with the targets or whatever it is, you can see the plastic, the pollution start to rise again. The EPR were partially actually were okay. The EPR targets for collection were met. For recycling, and that was also an insight from the study, to be met, it requires infrastructure that in South Africa we don't have yet. So to meet those targets, we need more infrastructure. That was another insight from the study. The optimal system change, which is kind of find that sweet spot that optimize everything, is the last one. So if we apply those kind of that optimal system change, which has as a target to minimize plastic pollution, minimize greenhouse gas emission, minimize cost, and maximize jobs, you can reduce plastic by 63% in 2040. And those are the things that are required. So reduce plastic demand by 2.6% by using by the implementation of reusing refilling schemes, so product as a service. Increase plastic waste collection and recycling by almost 5% per year, and improve safe disposal of plastic in sanitary landfill, which means investing again in infrastructure, new infrastructure, or upgrading the infrastructure that are already present, because we have landfills that are not compliant, to making them compliant. And here you can see each and every intervention, the size of each and every intervention: reducing, substitute material, recycle, and safe landfill, where they take you. Okay, we'll skip to that. I want just to touch on the next step, which is the report, which is come on, another one, no. Oh my goodness, it's me or it's you? Okay, one more. Okay, stop here. Okay. What I want to highlight here is that we are trying to do the very same thing in Zambia at the moment. We are facing a total different level of issue compared to the South African study, which, next slide, which is the data. As I said before, in South Africa, we're blessed because we have data. What we're struggling now in Zambia is to get data to run the model. So that's the lesson learned in applying this tool, that is a great tool. Know your data and your data gaps. The major data gaps that we have found so far is there's almost nothing when it comes to the rural environment. whether it is collection, recycling, how much is disposed, is a question mark everywhere. Nobody has the data. Imported plastic in non-plastic products, especially when it's packaged goods, whether it's food or whatever. There's nothing because they fall under other HS code, so there's not traced. Big question mark. So data availability, that's one of the interim insights we are getting from the application pathways in Zambia. It's a data availability should inform or guide your research or your research question or your policy question. You start at the beginning with fantastic question, and the more you get in, it's a year now, so I think we got quite a hold of what we have and what we don't have. So we should revise this research question, this research policy question, considering the data that we have available. What the other lesson? Engage with each and every stakeholders you can find that can come to speak to you in the plastic sector. Why it's important? First, to discuss and develop the proper system map. If I show you the Zambia system map, is quite difficult. It's quite different from the South Africa. To discuss on data gaps and verify the assumption through expert technical opinions. So there be consensus. There should be majority. There should be all the experts should say, okay, it's 5% because X, Y, Z. And then to refine and consolidate the research of policy question based on the data availability. 5 minutes, I'm done. Thank you very much.